Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and today we're going to be ranking every single galactic legend. We're going to go from the worst all the way up to the best. Couple things to keep in mind before we get into the list and into the video. Number one, we're going to be going off the criteria here, right, that it's all game modes. We're not just going to talk GAC or Territory Wars, like all game modes. Number two, we're going to assume that it's like the best version of that team that you can assemble. And we'll kind of talk about a few of those things of like, yes, we're going to include the lifters. We're going to, go through those things. But we're also going to be realistic. And particularly with Darth Bane here. Yes, Sith Eternal plus Darth Bane is a very good team. But how often are you actually pulling that out? We'll get into that. Because just saying, oh, this version of the team is the best. Well, how often are you actually doing that, right? So we're going to be realistic with this. We're going to go through. So hopefully you guys can like and subscribe, comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. Let's give a shout out to our channel members, as always, for their continued support. If you're ever interested, link down below, along with a link to Discord. Go check it out. Thank you guys again for keeping the faith, for believing in me. I really appreciate all of you. You make the best community in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, and I am just so honored to be a part of it. So thank you guys again. Let's get in here. Let's talk about our video. Alright, so as I said, it's all game modes. The other thing I forgot to mention at the start there is we're going to take into consideration the current state, right? It is January 2025, Datacrons, everything else. This will be a revolving list. So maybe this is something to do after every Datacron set. Maybe that's a new series to do, is, GL rankings after every Datacrons. So, alright, look, Sith Eternal is first. This dude sucks, right? This dude sucks. Yeah, he's just terrible. He really needs babysitters, right? And early on, those babysitters are Wat Tambor in the armor, and then eventually we get to Darth Bane, who's the ultimate babysitter for Sith Eternal. The thing is, Bane doesn't need Sith Eternal. Like, Bane in most battles does not need Sith Eternal to do what he needs to do. The most common use of that now is beating GL Ahsoka. Again, that's going to be dependent on, I don't know what her Datacron will or won't do to Bane, but I feel that's a very consistent counter in Grand Arena. Outside of Grand Arena, not nearly as consistent. At times against Queen Amidala, you will want to use Bane and Sith Eternal together when some of those Datacrons were active where there was a lot of offense for buffs. You kind of needed Sith Eternal and Bane together to ignore the taunt to be able to link up Padawan Obi-Wan. And then with, Qui-Gon there. And then with Jedi Master Kenobi, you kind of need Bane and Sith Eternal there just to make sure that you win that fight. Because otherwise, it's very dicey and you're probably going to lose. So, at times, yes, you will need that. But most of the time, for what most people use Bane for, Sith Eternal, doesn't hold you back, but it's unnecessary. It's an overkill. So, overall, though, he sucks, right? Especially, you take Bane out of the picture, he sucks. With Bane, on offense, he's good, but defensively, you can't use him. So another kind of liability there. And a lot of the teams that you would use Bane and Sith Eternal with on offense, Bane doesn't need Sith Eternal. So that's kind of why Sith Eternal is at the end, is the fact that most of the stuff that Bane kills, he doesn't need Sith Eternal to do it. Alright, I am fully prepared for this hatred that I'm putting Supreme Leader Kylo Ren here, but I'm prepared for it, right? Unfortunately, I think Supreme Leader Kylo Ren just doesn't have enough viability on defense. Offensively, he's fantastic. There's a lot he does. But defensively, he's a liability. Now, I will say this. With Darkseid Rey, he will 1000% be moving up the list. I don't know where to, but with BDSM Rey, I think he's moving up the list. The reason he's down here, very similar to Sith Eternal, he needs babysat. And to beat some of those higher caliber galactic legends. He needs the armor. He needs Wat. He needs Malicos in 3v3. Or he needs Daka Zombie to do certain things. Like Supreme Leader Kylo Ren against Malgus at times can be very dicey if you don't bring in Night Sister Zombie and Old Daka to kind of keep Zombie coming back. It can be a problem. I've seen that team lose multiple times. I think offensively, again, very good. Defensively, complete liability. I am curious to see what he's able to do with Darkseid Rey. With Darkseid Rey, I have a feeling this guy could move up a bunch of spots. We're talking not just one. he could be moving up a lot depending on how good BDSM Rey makes him. So I recognize I'm making this a bit early. I kind of did that intentionally so that way I can come out and say, like, Kylo's the greatest. That's what I'm hoping for. But with Rey, he will be moving. We just don't know how much yet. So this is where he sits. And I think it's an accurate place to put him, especially because most people won't be getting Rey the first go around. Unless, I don't know, this Conquest is pretty easy. So I could see a lot of people getting there. But I know Conquest is a problem for a lot of players. But that's kind of where I'm putting Kylo. I think that's an accurate representation of where he belongs in terms of he has a very, like, hard ceiling with GLs of, like, I can't kill this team without doing all these crazy things. So that's kind of where I've got him. Next is JML, and this is really just because he needs a lifter unit. I think for a long time he was a very solid GL and much higher up the pecking order. I think with some of these newer GLs, some of the new characters that have come into the game, he's really just kind of struggled to keep up, and I think Datacrons are not always the kindest to him. The thing is, he can make some really good super teams, but then you're taking away from, like, other potential things. Listen, JML's still very good, and in a lot of game modes, he's fantastic. You know, he's, I'd say, one of the better GLs in Conquest. He's solid in TB, probably not as good as others. And I should go back to Kylo for a second. He can be very good in territory battles. But there's one planet in particular I don't like Kylo, and that's Dathomir. With Rey, he's moving. But JML, very good. A couple planets where, like, I'm not as convinced yet. I shouldn't say not as convinced. Where he doesn't make enough of an impact, right? A lot of the battles that he's in, some of them you absolutely need Jedi Master Luke. Other ones, not so much. But I think in PvP, for him to kind of climb into that next level of teams, he's kind of in need of a lifter unit. And because Cal isn't a lifter for him, Ezra isn't a lifter for JML. You know, Jedi Knight Luke was part of his requirements. Jedi Knight Revan's still very good, but kind of, you know, JML needs somebody. I don't know what he, like, but he needs something, right? I just think there's a little bit too much of a gaping hole with this team at times. Particularly defensively, they just get exposed by certain things. Offensively, they're better, but I think Datacrons have made them struggle against certain teams they used to slam dunk on, right? And again, this whole list could be like Datacrons have kind of moved them back to where they belong kind of thing. All right, next is Lord Vader, and yes, the haters are going to hate Lord Vader. I think this is an accurate representation of where he sits now. You know, he's a good GL. I think he's much better in PvE content than people give him credit for. Like, I'd rather use Lord Vader in territory battles than Kylo. Like, Lord Vader on auto wins so many territory battles that Kylo can't. On auto. And I think the other thing here as well is that Lord Vader has a much broader sense of, like, Empire, UFUs. There's so many characters to put in there that he can benefit from. I think Lord Vader's biggest problem was he was designed to beat Jedi Master Kenobi, and he's not the greatest at that. And I think some of that is just the buffs they made to Kenobi were so insane. I think there's, you know, I felt like with Lord Vader, if they added just like a little bit more to his kit, he'd be impossible to beat, right? Like, I feel like if you made Lord Vader hit like Kylo, you would never kill Lord Vader, right? I think it's a team that, it's not like it needs another lifter per se. It just needs something that, it's a team that either needs more survivability, more relic levels, like to be competitive. And I think it also needs some Omicrons. There's some of these GLs that don't have Omicrons on their teams, and that kind of holds them back to some of these newer GLs who have Omicrons in every game mode. Think of Jabba, Leia, Ahsoka Tano, you know, with GLs on those teams that are making them even better than they should be, right? And I'm not saying that GL teams shouldn't have Omicrons, but that is a factor to consider here, right? But I think in PvE, Lord Vader just very, very good. All right, listen, Rey is going here right above Lord Vader. I think Rey's a very solid Galactic legend. She's a home for every light side character. I mean, you can make some just awful teams with Rey, you know, throwing Cal Kestis and Ezra Bridger Exile and Commander Tano, or, you know, there's a whole laundry list of characters that just make this team so brutal to beat. where I think Rey struggles is, again, against other galactic legends, she's easier to exploit, right? Like Jedi Master Kenobi will dunk on a Rey team. I've seen Jedi Master Luke dunk on Rey teams. You know, Leia will dunk on a Rey team. Ahsoka can dunk on them. You know, I've seen Lord Vader beat these teams. Jabba. It's a team that I think offensively it's almost impossible to lose with it on offense because you can, you know, you're in control. Defensively, I think is where it struggles. The thing here is that without Ezra Bridger, I definitely think Rey would probably drop below Lord Vader, but because a lot of players can utilize Ezra with Rey here, I'm willing to put her at this place. And I think it's an accurate place to put her because I think, one, Ahsoka isn't quite accessible enough yet. And I also think there's a strong case to be made that once Ahsoka's datacrons go away, we'll get a more accurate view for that team and an argument made that Ezra belongs with Rey and not Ahsoka. That's a hot take, but I have a feeling that is going to start to become reality a little bit. Where I think this team and this GL shines is that there's a variety, you know, she is the truest galactic legend in the sense that every light side character is good with Rey. Like, she's a home for all light side characters. And so when it comes to these other game modes like Conquest and Territory Battles, you can utilize, I don't want to say leftover, but like, think of, you know, a good example in my own account here. My Galactic Republic. I've got Kenobi at Relic 7. And the rest of the, like, his team is Relic 8. You know, I have a bunch of Relic 8 Galactic Republic who I could use with Kenobi. I can throw them with Rey and still get 2 out of 2 on multiple planets. Like, that's where I think she's a home for everybody. She's really good. You know, you're ever like, oh, I'm not sure if this can beat it. Like, Rey can. So, I definitely think Rey is underrated, and I think with some of these newer additions to the game, she's continued to show her value and moved up the list. Look, next is Kenobi, and I think this is a very accurate place to have Kenobi, right? He's moving up the list here. He's definitely better than Rey and Lord Vader. I don't think he's better than anything else. The thing is, you need a Commander Tana with him, duh. But unlike a lot of the other Galactic Legends, his team is very much locked. Like, you don't use anybody other than, like, these couple of characters. You know, right now we're kind of using Fulcrum. That shouldn't really count. That crown's broken. Like, his team is kind of locked. And the other side of it as well is that once you learn how this team plays, it's very easy to counter it. Like, he's always going to lead off with damage immunity to Commander Tano. And after that, he always gives it to General Kenobi. You know, like, even in a Jedi Master Luke battle, he hard targets General Skywalker, Grandmaster Yoda, and Jedi Knight Revan. So you put one of them in your team and it can kind of, you know, there's like an order that he'll attack them in. So he's one of these GLs where it's almost very easy to predict how he's going to play. And so it can kind of limit his defensive performance. He's still a very good GL, but I definitely think, obviously, Ahsoka, Leia, and Jabba have come into the picture and really kind of messed things up for him. And now Baylan and Grand Arena's there. Bane came in. He's definitely not quite what he was at one point. Still very good, but not quite as indestructible as he used to be. Next is Jabba. He continues to shine, and I would argue there's probably a decent sized gap between Jabba and Jedi Master Kenobi, and that gap is called Sith Eternal. Sith Eternal can beat Jedi Master Kenobi with the right lineup. Sith Eternal cannot beat Jabba right now. He could maybe with Bane, but without, Bane, Sith Eternal won't do the trick. And a lot of that goes into the way Jabba's kit is designed. His team is really good. There's a little bit of customization here, like the first two characters, Chrysanthemum and Leia, always go in this team. And then it's a question of Boba, Embo, or Skiffguard Lando. Very solid team. I really like them. I just kind of feel like they're one of those where it struggles for me, at least where I think this team kind of misses out a little bit, is that on defense, Jabba with the Rancor is hit or miss. He doesn't always target the right person. Another area I'd say that they struggle with is that a character like Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, who, much lower on this list, is pretty consistent at beating them. And this is a team that I would argue certain datacrons can make or break. Meaning that there are certain datacrons that very much help this team but also can help, counter them. And then there's some that don't help this team at all and help others counter them. I think this is a solid place for them. I feel this is kind of where he belongs. Definitely a top 3 GL, just not in that conversation of the top 2. Second place is Ahsoka. Now, her datacron is absolutely helping. I don't know that we know the extent, and I am curious to see at what extent her datacron is helping. I think this GL, when the DC goes away, there's going to be a very interesting conversation to have. I'd argue she's better in Territory Wars than anything else. I feel like the General Syndulla and Padawan Sabine Omicrons are just so insanely good, right? In Territory Wars, I feel like they are just so insane and not nearly as valuable as Ezra's are in Grand Arena. Now, some of that could just be that I don't have Territory War Omicrons of my own to counter this team, and that's a very honest fact. But I think without her datacron, we're going to see a drop-off here. And I'd also argue that without the datacron, if she's not performing nearly as well, that's where the conversation of does Ezra go with Rey come into the picture. That if Ezra isn't helping beat the most common counters for her without the datacrons, then Ezra potentially goes with Rey, where that's a much bigger impact. It's stopping one of the more popular counters in Starkiller. So I have her here, and I think this is the proper place for her because there are things that are beating her in the game. There are things that are there. Like, it's not like I would say that she's the best Galactic Legend, all things considered. I think she's good, but I don't know that she's stolen the number 1 slot. And that number 1 slot belongs to Galactic Legends Leia Organa. I still think she's the best Galactic Legend, hands down, in terms of what she does in Grand Arena, what she can do in Territory Wars, TB. I mean, this is just such a great team, and that's not to knock Ahsoka. I think the gap right now between them is pretty similar. I make the argument that where I think Princess Leia reigns supreme is that the Rebel faction is so large that the 4th and 5th slots for Leia have a lot more versatility than they will with Ahsoka, who is Spectre, right? Everything is about Spectre, Spectres, Spectre, 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 Spectre. And not that Spectre is a bad team, but much like Kenobi, we're going to get to a point where we learn how this team plays because you won't really be able to surprise us with the Ahsoka team. Okay, maybe there's a datacron like Fulcrum or something, but you're not going to get a lot of variation, right? With Leia, there's so much variation and so much change that can happen that what happens when, there's a datacron for Ezra Bridger that makes him insane and putting him with Leia is broken, right? Or, the current situation right now with Fulcrum where she can go with Leia and, be amazing. Or, what happens if Kyle gets a really good datacron that works well with Leia Organa? Like, she can house all of these random rebels that make her so good. I think she beats every single Galactic Legend in the game, including the new Ahsoka. And she's doing it even with, in 3v3, I was looking, and it's the standard Leia, Drogon, R2 is still beating this character. So that kind of gives me this, I don't want to say hope, but this feeling that Leia is going to reign supreme, and that if Leia is beating Ahsoka Tano while Ahsoka's got her at the peak of her powers, Leia's going to do it when Ahsoka comes back down to Earth, and that's why I think she's number 1. I do think Ahsoka is going to be that second best GL because I think the combination of some of these Omicrons is just going to destroy other GLs, and I think that the kit is designed enough to counter a lot of things not named Leia Organa that I feel that this is a pretty solid, going to be the counter to it, which all things considered, I'm pretty okay with. Since Leia is a very easy GL to acquire, which I don't know how that, if you invested in Ahsoka, you got to tell me how you feel about that. That if Leia is consistently dunking on this, then maybe there's a conversation to be had that CG needs to do something. But that's the way I see the GLs right now. Let me know your thoughts down below, guys. Again, this is a rudimentary list. There's not a lot of science involved here. It's just my personal opinions, and we're not getting into every little thing they do. It's just an overarching thing. So I love you all. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.